Very good morning, class. Well, welcome to today. Yesterday, we have spoken about, first of all, society. In our introduction to basic terms, we've said a society consists of multiplicity of individuals, which means multiple individuals, sharing certain common goals, having common organization, and exhibiting social solidarity. Exhibiting means showing or displaying social solidarity, which means group bond. We said, why is it important? Because it helps us to survive. It's a survival tactic, and it helps us to become human, for which we need social interactions. And then we said, how has it evolved? We said cooperation was ensured through sex and gossip for the longest period of time. But then the Homo sapiens species evolved this unique capacity to also use language for fiction, to talk about things that didn't actually exist. And with that, we were able to ensure cooperation in much larger and bigger numbers. We then talked about culture. We said culture consists of ideas, ideologies, beliefs, values, norms, language, tools, and technology, art, and literature. That this is what it consists of. We said that the material culture consists of things basically that you can touch and see. They're tangible. Tangible means something you can touch, like I can touch this book, I can touch this. Tangible, that you can touch and see, those are material part. That's the tool and technology. The parallel word we use alongside is civilization. That is to say that we refer to the Paleolithic civilization, stone tools being used primarily, the Chalcolithic or the Neolithic, copper or iron being used. So based on the tools and technology being used, we refer to the whole civilization. Then the material culture, then the non-material culture, we said, refers to the ideas, the ideologies, the beliefs, the values. We define these by saying that ideologies consist of ideas which are interconnected to each other in some way. They can be having shared assumptions, presumptions, some logical interconnection to each other. We took some examples: minimalism, consumerism, capitalism, communism, socialism. These are all just some formats of ideologies. We said values are choice preferences, whether you like or dislike something. People share that in society. So there are shared values. We may respect elders, we may dislike cruelty or violence, right? So belief are your ideas to the world, how you look at the world, what you consider to be true about the world. Belief, any aspect of this world. And then we talked about art and language. We said that art is basically a wide variety of formats of therapy. What we popularly consider art is things like sculpture and paintings and writing, novel stories, poetry, theater, all these sorts of things. But there is no definition to art, basically, per se, which limits it by saying that repairing a motorcycle cannot be an art, right? Which says that painting your home cannot be an art, or creating a paint cannot be an art. Anything can be an art, basically, if you are able to enjoy it, if you are able to work in a state of flow, right? It can be an art. Now, we talked about language also as non-material culture, and we said that language is in fact the most important vehicle of cultural transmission. Now, this is where we were yesterday. Now there is a concept given by a guy called Ogburn. We're going to sometimes make fun of the names of people because just we like them. Because it helps us to remember better. Right? No disrespect to these guys. Like, oh God, something is burning. Yes, burn. He basically maybe he burned his, I don't know what he burned, right? But oh God, it was burning, right? OG burn, right? So his name was Ogburn, right? And this guy gave a concept called cultural lag. Please write down briefly in a sentence. Ogburn gave the concept of cultural lag. Ogburn gave the concept of cultural lag, which refers to the idea that material culture is faster to change. Material culture is faster to change than the non-material culture. Material culture is faster to change than the non-material culture. Full stop. Tools, technologies change faster. Tools, technologies change faster. However, customs, traditions, attitudes, lag behind. Customs, traditions, attitudes lag behind. LAG, lag means they are left behind. Now we see that what this is meaning to say is that the material part is always changing faster. People, however, are going to take time to adjust to it. Cultures are going to take still more time to adjust to it. So change happens, but then your individual capacity to adapt to change, which is called intelligence, is largely a product of your emotional intelligence. Are you able to adapt to change? We all do not have equal capacity and equal capacity across all periods of time. It in general depends upon your emotional intelligence of how nicely you're able to adapt to change. And in that phase of life, how stressed are you? How calm are you? How composed are you? How much you're able to adapt to change. So the most intelligent people actively look forward to change. The people with the lesser degree of intelligence, emotional intelligence, they resist change. However, since change is inevitable, it is something you can't do anything about in life in general, and in societies, tools and technology change the fastest. There are going to be new ways of doing things that is just going to happen. Right? Now, we find as examples that under the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, the government of India has constructed toilets all across India. In rural areas, in urban areas. In the rural areas, in the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan Gramin rural program, there is a component of 12,000 rupees allocation for IHHL, Indian Household Latrine. That's the official allocation there. So the government has built a lot of toilets, right, with this allocation grant that has been given. But we find that nearly 40% of the toilets that are constructed are not used for the designated purpose, for the purpose of defecation, right, doing the morning business. What do people do? People put a cardboard on the toilet seat and tie their goat there, use it as a storeroom, use it as an extra room, do all kinds of things, but just don't do what it is supposed to be used for. Why so? They believe that it will pollute their home. Right? That it will pollute their home. And there are all kinds of other ideas, like also that, in India, shitting is a community activity. Love is a personal activity. Love making, love expression of any sort is a personal activity. Unlike in USA. In USA, वो प्यार कहीं भी करने लगते हैं. Benches पे, trains में, right? They start anywhere, people. But in India, it's a very personal activity. If you go and do romancing in parks, then Bajrang Dal and all the affiliates of other cultural people will come around and tell you ki, no, illa, we have problem. Right. So romance is supposed to be done, or any expression of love for that matter is supposed to be done behind private walls. In USA, in Western European countries, they shit very personally. To them, shitting is a personal activity. They do it behind walls, or any kind of excretion, right? They do it behind walls. Right? For us, however, it is a group activity. Right? So as you see that we, in villages especially, the men go in the mornings into the fields and women go into the evening, right, into the fields, and often people sit all nearby and have their political discussions over shit. You see, like CCD has a slogan, a lot can happen over coffee, right? Our traditional area of all these discussions is, we don't have coffee houses in villages. We have fields where we sit together, right? And do all these discussions, right, of what is happening in the village. So now we find that when toilets have been constructed, then people have all kinds of attitudinal lag backs. They say that हमें मजा नहीं आ रहा, अकेले कैसे बैठ के कर ले, अकेले ही कर ले. We should, so they find it a strange idea that I should sit alone within small walls and shit. What about all my friends who shit alongside me? What about them? How can I talk with them now? Right. And then they say all kinds of other things. For surveys indicate, people even say कि हमें ठंडी ठंडी हवा लगती है पीछे, हम नहीं करेंगे अंदर दीवार में बैठ के. That when we go sit outside, हमें ठंडी सुबह ठंडी ठंडी हवा होती है, right? Chilly air, right? They say our bosom enjoys the chilly air, right? But we don't like sitting in four walls. Those kind of things are also there, right? So the result is that despite the fact that we have spent a substantial amount of money, which is quite big, right? Nearly 40% of that infrastructure is not being utilized for the said purpose, which also has obviously other implications in terms of sanitation problems, diseases, and water supply pollutions, and all kinds of things, right? So what is this an example of? That while the tools and technology, which in this case simply means sanitation technology, while that has taken a step ahead and we have allocated an infrastructure and everything is there, a program is there, and we do that, yet still everybody does not agree to it. People's attitudes, mindset, values, beliefs, ideas that they subscribe to, customs, traditions, they don't change as fast. They take much more time to change. They lag behind. So we find, for example, today we have an IT world, right, where so much is on the fingertips, information, right? But we really don't make very good use of it, right? For the bulk of the people, obviously you people may be, as younger age people, more technology savvy, comfortable with it and using it possibly more. But especially middle-aged and elderly people are not making, maybe I would say 95% inefficient uses there of everything that is out there that can be done right now with technology to simplify, to increase efficiency, to increase productivity, to just do everything better. But we just don't do it. We do it the traditional way as it has been done, and we're uncomfortable doing it. It will take time to be able to use to its full potential everything is just even available right now in tools and technology, because people have done it in the way they've done it before. And that be not only traditional fields like agriculture, right, but modern industries also, how the textile industry works, or how the diamond polishing industry is working, or just simply how education works. Like, for example, the way we think about it, education, right now is especially people who are getting into schools right now, children, right? And they're learning the same typical education, that CBSE, CSE model, and what's the point of it? Why? Traditionally, this education prepares us for careers, not life. That's one major problem. Education, we presume, prepares us for life. It doesn't. It only prepares us for careers, that too narrow careers. But however, artificial intelligence, robotics, automation combined, previously shaken by the gig economy, but now with all these new technologies, right, it is being shaken up so much that in the 10-15 year period that we expect to see in the coming time period, right, everything we know about our current economy is going to change dramatically. You can't even predict. So what do you do when there is so much change and you don't know what is going to happen? When you cannot invest in skills because you don't know those skills will be valid anymore 5 years down the line or not. In those situations, you invest in the stable part, that is you. When you don't know which skills are future necessary, future ready, because they're changing so fast, and you are working with a long gestation period, a long time period of investment. So what do? You invest in the part that remains most stable, that is you. Then you invest in yourself for life. You invest in your own set of competencies, the core competencies, rather than skill acquisition. Our education system is not doing that. Our education system is continuing to work with teaching children mathematics tables, integration, differentiation. As you know, we all use ChatGPT, and there is that that Chinese model now also. What's that name? DeepSeek R1, and the Alibaba group has created even a cheaper, better model than DeepSeek R1 now, right? And the pace at which it is going, we are seeing that the economy of scale is working. Another next 10 to 15 years, you don't need any mathematics skills practically, right? For the most part, right? You don't need calculators, you don't need computers in the traditional way we've used it, because the general purpose computers are coming along, right? You don't, all these industries that have budded up in the middle, they're dramatically changing. If you look at the scale of what is happening, simple projections, people who are in the know-how of the industry change, it is very understandable that this modern education does not, the people who are going to schools right now, it does not make any dumbest sense to teach them that and to make their lives miserable. Maybe the best thing we can do is just let them be happy. Right? That way at least we've not made them miserable for something which was no good and no point at all. And if we can do something, we can give them better skills about themselves. Work on, for example, adversity quotients, emotional intelligence, things that they're going to need to adapt to the pace of change that we have today, because it has never happened before. What are we saying? There's a lot of set of competencies that we need to give to people. Are we changing? Are people recognizing that? No, absolutely not. Systems don't change that fast. People's attitudes also don't change that fast. Still, the market demand is for the old product only. People want to go and get their admission into all the saints. Saint John, Saint Stephen, Saint this, Saint that. Convent school mein jana hai, hod lagi, because everybody else is doing it. Without understanding, does it make any shitty difference now? You're getting your child into a school, the product result is going to be after 15 years. And you're thinking the economy is going to work in the same way that it works today. What are we saying? This is the usual condition. We may just see this much more now because the pace of change has increased very fast. If you were living in 500 CE or 500 AD and you were living in 1700 CE or 1700 AD, over this period, you would have barely noticed any change in society in terms of tools and technology. But the kind of change that happened till 2000 was substantial. And then till 2010, to measure the change between 2025 and something that really breaks the graph in the next, basically 2050 period, the amount of change that is going to happen in this period in total terms, for the screen ending here, is going to be so dramatically wide that that kind of change has not happened combined in the millions of years of our history. So what's the point? People, why do you study history? So that you can predict the future. That's the point of studying history. You learn from history because we're interested in archetypes. We're not interested in particular who lived when, because that's their concern. They're dead, that's over. If there's something to be learned because it continues to repeat cyclically and so that we can improve ourselves, that's why we learn history. That's the point of learning history. But this only works if the conditions that govern your life were very similar, or at least maybe 40, 50, 60% similar to the conditions that governed other people's lives. But if you're living in a time period where things are happening that have never happened before, you cannot use history as a guide to your future and understanding. Since the masses always respond to the lag period, there is always that momentum going on. You're running very fast, you stop putting in force here, thoda sa to aur bhagi loge aage. Run a little faster. Cultures have a lot of momentum. They don't change overnight. Tools and technologies have dramatically changed. They're changing at a pace never seen before. But our cultures are going to take time to respond. Just that previously before, when the change was happening, it wasn't much in degree. And even if you take time to respond, that was kind of okay because it did not have dramatic consequences, because the change wasn't very big. But now, when you fail to respond and acknowledge the change, then the consequences are very big. For example, Elon Musk's prediction in 10 years from now is that there shall be no middle class. You know who accepts that prediction? Multiple different Nobel laureates who've received Nobels for economics. They have their own predictions. And basically their predictions of all economists are around the same, that the middle class will be wiped out in the next 10 years. Out of the world. So there are only extremely rich and extremely poor people. This is the prediction. So when you want to understand where do you lie, the implications are severe. But this concept of cultural lag is thereby important for us to understand the predicament of our society, the position, the problematic position of our society. Okay. So we've talked about something called material culture, non-material culture, and cultural lag, and what that means for us. Right. Now, we would like to talk about socialization. Socialization. Please write down. Socialization refers to the transmission of values and culture. Socialization refers to the transmission of values and culture, often to the next generation. Often to the next generation, but not always. Right. Often to the next generation. Resocialization. Resocialization refers to change and replacement, refers to change and replacement in values and culture, refers to change and replacement in values and culture. Now, we have socializing agencies and types of socialization. Primary and secondary. So, we have primary socializing agencies, we have secondary socializing agencies, and we have primary socialization and we have secondary socialization. So, please write down primary socialization. Primary socialization refers to the initial adoption of values and culture, often in the early years of life, through primary socializing agencies, such as family, education, peer group, and even YouTube, media, meaning in general media, but more particularly children at the young age have access to more YouTube than social media, right? Social media comes a little later, that's a teenage thing in India currently. YouTube comes first year, second year, third year itself, right? That's currently how it works. Then write down secondary socialization. Secondary socialization refers to the socialization that happens in the later years of life. Socialization that happens in the later years of life by secondary socializing agencies, such as media, the political system, economic system, media, political system, economic system, religion, workspaces, etc. So these are basic terms, and I think this is quite easy to understand, right? Because we've obviously been through that, right? That our initial values we simply learn by association. Most of the learning we do is by observational learning. Right? That is the most efficient way, dominant way that humans learn. Right? instructional learning, which teachers and parents try to do, is, let me give you the scientific model of its efficiency. This is you. This is your teachers or your parents' advice. It has a very safe distance from your brain. It goes safely around it. This is your friend's Gobar advice. It has absolute transmission through your brain. This is the scientific model of the efficiency of instructional learning. People never learn what they are sought to be taught. They learn what they observe. Mostly. So observational learning is much more effective. That is, you become who your parents are, not what they try to teach you. So, your parents may tell you, don't get angry all the time, have patience. But if they don't have patience, you don't have patience. They may tell you to have patience, but they don't know how to, for example, deal with various disruptive emotions. And since they don't practice it on a daily basis, you never knew those techniques, you don't practice it on a daily basis. And so you didn't learn about it. And so this is just useless judgmental sentences when people tell you, don't take stress. तुम्हारे ना लेने से नहीं आता तो फिर प्रॉब्लम ही क्या थी? If somebody tells you don't take stress and you think I don't want to take stress and you then don't take stress, there is no stress. तो प्रॉब्लम ही सॉल्व थी लाइफ की. This is a judgment. People tell you don't take stress, which means you're in stress, that is also your problem. It means you have total control of it without you actually knowing how to. People say, पढ़ाई किया करो. करना तो आप भी चाहते हो. You also want to do it. So far the main problem is that the techniques you've been using don't work that efficiently. Intention की problem थोड़ी है. You know at the back of your mind, even when you're not studying, that you should study. You're not able to bring yourself to do it. The problem is not of intention. Intention is not determining those things. What is primarily? Knowledge of how to do things differently. What will work in your immediate situation? If you are facing, let's just say, this wall mode where you don't feel like studying, how can you study when you are in that mode? How can you work from the mode exactly where you stand today? Not the advice of what ought to be done. वो तो सबको ही पता है क्या करना है. Everybody knows that you have to do great things in life. The problem is people don't know how to do it. You're not helping them. This is simply judging. Now, the socialization, mostly as we've said, is through observational learning. Right? That's the large part of it. And then obviously there are a lot of other techniques, rewards and behaviors, operant conditioning, all kinds of things. Basically, the behaviors that are rewarded and the behaviors that are punished. There can obviously be an misunderstanding of what is reward and what is punishment. Right? Because we fail to identify them appropriately. I'll give you an example of how the socialization works. Like for example, my daughter, right? She was like around 1.5 years old, so cute. Both my babies are so cute, right? I loved them. When my daughter was 1.5 years old, right? We went to a mall. I remember this moment. We were into a mall, and she behaves very differently with my wife, and behaves very differently with me. That's still it, right? So we went to the mall. There was this West Side, right, in Forum Mall back then, now Nexus, right, and she wanted something, to grab. She was 1.5 years old, cute little cuddly baby, and she was just walking around, and then whatever she wanted wasn't there, right? So I remember what she wanted. She wanted to go up the escalator by herself, like the escalator which was within the West Side connecting ground floor to first floor, right? She wanted to, and if I was like holding her, right, because obviously I'm going to let her be on the escalator by herself, right? She was like, no, just don't touch me, babies want to do things by themselves, right? Just don't touch me, right? So just get away, I want to do this myself, right? So I obviously stood a little far away distance so that I would catch her if, she falls, right? But this was not acceptable to her, right? She was like, go away, right? I'll do it by myself, right? He said, that is not happening, right? So she went straight to the ground, right, and lying flat face, started to cry, right in the middle of the mall, and and obviously everybody is looking, right? So what could I do, right? I mean, babies create a scene, right? So I lie down right next to her, right, flat face, right, and started to cry louder than her. Right? And now everybody else who was not looking was definitely looking also. To see a grown up being that, right? And I was just next to her, so she stopped doing what she was doing. She looked at me crying, and she was like, I was like, She found out this is not going to work. She got up and she walked normally to, another section to where my wife was shopping. Right? She found out that this strategy doesn't work with me. Right? Crying to get what you want is not going to work. Right? Nuisance value is not going to work. I can create more nuisance. Now, let me explain to you rewards and punishments. A lot of times, parents have this complaint that this baby is a nuisance. No matter how much I scold them, they never learn. What we are misidentifying is what the reward and punishment is. Since parents do not give attention to their children when they're happy, when they're doing great things, when they're doing productive things, when they're engaging positively with the environment that they would like them, they just remain busy in their stuff. So these children don't get attention. The most important currency in the world is attention. Good quality attention. If you can't get it, you will settle for bad quality attention. That's how the world works. So if the child is not able to get good quality attention, doing good quality stuff, then the child will simply be a nuisance maker, crying around loud, because at least that then gets the attention of the parents, even if it's scolding, even if it's whatever else, but at least then when you create problems, you get attention. If you only get attention when you create problems, then you're going to create more problems. So parents are saying, oh, I scolded, I gave punishment, yet still the behavior doesn't change. Oh no, you've misidentified what the reward and punishment is here. Now, what are we saying? When we are saying socialization, there are obviously these fundamental processes through which we learn. Right? And that is through observation, that is through rewards and punishments. Right? What are rewards and punishments? That's a deeper understanding of every situation. Now, secondary socialization is something that continues to happen as we move out of these peer groups, these friend circles and family and our educational institutions. Then we move around to mainstream society, and then we see these people have those cars and your work and what your office culture is and the media exposure and all the Netflix that you're getting, right? And everything else, right? The religion and what the ideas that they put inside your brain, right? All of those, right? So primary and secondary socializing agencies and primary and secondary socialization. Now, some degree of your values, beliefs, ideas, culture continues to change across life. You go from one office to another office, the culture is different. So you absorb that culture. You go from one city to another city and the culture of that city is different. So you absorb that culture. You grow up and you definitely pass into other stages of life where you have different responsibilities, you'll be doing different things, you have different exposure, different understanding of things. And so re-socialization, which is a replacement of a part of your earlier self, your earlier beliefs, ideas, values, culture, is always happening. Re-socialization is an ongoing phenomenon. In certain cases, we have total institutions. In certain cases, we have total institutions. Please write down. Total institutions are those social institutions. Total institutions are those social institutions which result in large scale re-socialization, They control multiple, if not all, aspects of an individual's life. They control or influence multiple, if not all, aspects of an individual's life. For example, army, prisons, cults, army, prisons, cults, CULTS. So, what does this mean? When you're in the armed forces, then they want to control everything. What time you wake up, and what are you going to be your daily routines time-wise, right? What are you going to eat? How you're going to eat? How do you interact with other people? What activities are preferable? What values you should cherish, right? How you should be physically. They're going to control your family life also. What kind of relationships should you have? What is the idealized form? They're going to control so many different aspects of your life, from community to your finances. Obviously, they're going to influence to your social statuses, how and where you are in position and hierarchy, and how you interact with other people, your mannerisms, your values, your physical life, so many different aspects, right, that they end up in a very major way influencing you. You know, you can often easily identify that this is an army man, right, even when they're not in army clothes, because they have this certain homogenized walk and talk and, you know, how they do it. So that becomes muscle memory. That's an ethical question, side ethical question. If you do the right things without the right reasons, is that ethical? For example, I remember this colonel, right? He would always open the door for his wife. Right? He would be very courteous. Anybody who sat in front of him, right? He would, first do all the pleasantries. Would you like some tea? He would insist, right? Some coffee, right? He did all the how are yous and greetings, and fundamentally he did not respect people. My reading of him, which is my perception, was that he fundamentally did not respect people. He disrespected his wife. He disrespected everybody that he worked around. He had contempt for them. He was not a person who believed in the fundamental idea of equality, right, of human respect. But he did all those pleasantries, and my reading of it was that is because he was hardwired to it. He had been trained in it for so long. Fundamentally, he was not that person. Right? So, for example, if I open the door for you, it's an overt gesture, it's an external gesture which says that, I value you, I respect you, and you're meaning to convey something. But if you don't actually believe in that, you're conveying something which you don't believe in. It's a lie. It's a lie, isn't it? It's like when we see that somebody comes around and says, hi, welcome to see you, and you can see it in their eyes that they don't want you, but they say welcome. They say, wonderful to have you in our home as a guest. And you know, as it happens in complex family chemistries, that they don't like you. They're not happy to have you. You don't like that hypocrisy, do you? It's a lie, it's a complex lie. Right? So we find that people can be obviously socialized in behavior, right? They're patterned in behavior. It doesn't always mean that's who they are. That's just what they wear, like clothes. We wear mannerisms, we wear perfumes, we wear words, polished words that we say in front of other people. That doesn't mean that's who we are. That's just the clothes we are wearing for now. Now, we find that total institutions like prisons, right, again, they, as you can see, can control so many aspects of your lives, or cults. By cults, we mean, in this case, religious institutions which are very strong and hard and fast. They're usually small institutions, personality driven, without formal organization, but very strong in staunch beliefs. They have high demands over all aspects of your lives. Like Jehovah's cult, Manson family cult, the Rajneeshis, some say, was a cult, right? Rajneesh Osho, right? Different ways. It doesn't always mean that it's negative, right? It just means that it has a very high commitment requirement from its followers over various different aspects of their lives. So, we've said so far what is socialization, primarily of two types, primary and secondary socialization, and primary and secondary socializing agencies. And when there is, large scale resocialization, then that often happens within total institutions within a period of time. Right. Now, we would like to talk about status and role discussion. Please write down. Status refers to the position that one holds. Status refers to the position that one holds within a hierarchy of positions. Within a hierarchy of positions. Then write down further. As the occupant of a status, brackets open, for example, father, mother, daughter, sister, for example, father, mother, daughter, sister, working professional, guitarist, citizen, neighbor, etc. Brackets closed. As the occupant of a status, the tasks that an individual is expected to perform, is referred to as role expectation. role expectation. So what do we mean by role expectation? That's what people expect you to do. You may or may not do that, obviously. So your parents may expect multiple things out of you. Right? So there are those multiple role expectations, that you will take care of them, that you will have a good career, that you will be hardworking, that you will have right values, what they consider right values, that you will marry if maybe they may have a role expectation from you, that you will marry, that you will give them grandchildren, right? That they will play with those grandchildren, right? They may have all these as role expectations from you. You may or may not perform them, right? You may give them grandchildren without marriage, and this will really upset them. Right? So that was not their expectation. Please write down further. Role performance refers to the actual performance on the task, that is expected from the individual. The actual performance on the task that is expected from the individual. It varies from role expectation. It varies from role expectation. It varies from role expectation based on the efficiency of socialization. Based on the efficiency of socialization, abilities and competencies, and reward structures. Abilities and competencies and reward structures. Abilities and competencies and reward structures. Full stop. So what does that mean? From what is expected out of you, what are you actually going to do? That really depends upon a variety of factors, role performance. And that is that, like for example, first of all, your parents' values are not your values. Now your parents expect subconsciously, or maybe they say it, you to be like them. But then you don't have the same values as your parents do. And one of the main reasons is you grew up in a different world. You've got all the media exposure, YouTube, Netflix in your formative years that they did not have. You're interacting with people, you're living in a globalized world, you've got all this changing economy, you've got different schools and colleges that you've possibly gone to from your parents. So you've had a different exposure, right? And simply for that reason itself, the values that you may have absorbed are not the same values that your parents have. You've grown up in a different time with different exposure. So first of all, what they believe in, you don't exactly believe the replica of that. You don't believe in the same things. You may have 40% of what they expect out of you, maybe 30% you've accepted, maybe 20%, maybe 50%, who knows, right? So that's the efficiency of socialization. To what degree were they able to imbibe and inculcate what they wanted you to grow up with as values, as ideas, as beliefs, as culture? If you're living as an immigrant in an outside country, people have a big problem in being able to transmit their culture. I'll give you this one small example. This is my mother's very good friend. She got 2 sons. She's very rich. She lives in London. She's very rich, but with a lot of problems. Her husband and her, they made the money. They were practically without education. They went there, they established a very big business, as often hardworking immigrants do. Right. They had a transportation business, like a very, very big business. And they've got extreme rich amount of money. Right. And apparently the children who were born there in London and grew up there did not have any of those values that usually you have in India. Right. They got what rich spoiled children get in Western cultures. Right. So when the husband died, the children really didn't even come, right? He died out of cancer, long suffering. They didn't even come to visit. All they wanted was property. They filed property suits and all kinds of disputes with the family. Now she lives alone in London. She sold all the property, right? And she's going to be leaving it to charity, because that's how the children treated, her dead husband now and her. Right? She's got all that property. She's got nobody to leave it to. And she doesn't let relatives come close by, because it can be quite dangerous, because you know how many things people can get in their minds, ideas, because when you're very rich and alone and nobody to take care of you, and she's not, the street smart kind. She was like the home lady. That's the role she played most of her life. She's got a lot of money, which she's got all layered up through lawyers and charities, that she's going to leave to all of it as she dies. What are we saying? That's a typical problem of immigrant families. You want economic prosperity, you go to another country, but then your children get raised up there, they don't get the values that you think you're going to get, because you don't control the external condition now. They're going to go to schools and grow up in an environment everywhere else where that's not what you think your culture is. Right. So the degree to which socialization efficiency is going to happen, that depends upon a lot of factors. Then after that, it's your question of abilities and competencies. Right. Whether your role performance will be to what degree match with role expectations. So abilities and competencies, let me give you an example. My dad, he has done 5 masters. Right? 5 masters. I mean, who does that even, right? 5 masters kiye inhone. My mother has done 3 masters. I'm the least educated person in my family. Right? My extended family. My younger sister, who's 10 years younger to me, is a computer genius. She's like literally a computer genius. She's like computer Einstein kind of thing. Right? She creates industry standards. She's 10 years younger to me. Right? She has a package in multiple crores. Right? Which is slightly below par of her current market value. Right? I can go on with my family. My elder brother has an IT company. I'm the only useless guy in my family. Right? Least educated, least accomplished, least everything. Right? And least in terms of hard-working competency. This is my evaluation. The kind of effort that my parents put, they've been at very super top positions, right? The kind of effort that they put in their life, that they have put, everybody else in my family, you know what I do? I wake up in the morning and put a neem datun, right? Much better than traditional brushes. I put a neem datun and go to the gardens around my house and, look for new flora and fauna, smell flowers, do meditation. So, people in my family wake up, start working, sleep till working, work their whole life. I am the flower smelling kind. I smell a different flower, I get some poetry, I write it. Matlab, in my family, that's absolute standard of uselessness. I am that guy. Now, what am I saying? My abilities and competencies are different. I just cannot bring myself to do what everybody else does in my family. And as such, I cannot, even if they would like me to, do what they've been doing. Right? Because abilities and competencies are different. So obviously I have some that they don't have, like they just can't sit and do nothing. It's a competency, I'm telling you. To sit and do nothing is a competency. Most people cannot do it. They don't have peace inside. When you're not peaceful inside, you fill your work with social media. Think about it. When do you see social media? When you're stressed, you definitely open it up to deviate yourself. People go to gym it's a kind of intoxication also. When they don't go to the gym, they get very angry. When they don't work out, when they don't go for that jog. That tells you something. You're not doing this because you want. You're not in control here. Being able to sit and do nothing is a competency I have. I can sit and do nothing and think about nothing and be in that state for long hours. Apparently, it's very different from theirs. They do work, things that matter. So, we're saying role performance is very different than role expectation. And the last point we've written there is also on account of reward structures. So, what are reward structures? Let's just say you go to an office, and we all know that corruption is an illegal offense, right? And your promotion is going to happen based on seniority and whatever, maybe some part of your work performance, right? In government organization structures, right? So, however, the official incentive structure and the unofficial incentive structure can be very different. Let's just say it's a flowing corruption department. You know, there are different corruption departments, kind of, meaning corruption works differently in different departments. Some places you have to dig up, right? आपको पैसा बनाना है, तो you will dig up and find out problems and then maybe use that as a hook to get money. Some places there are flowing departments. So on every table, the money comes on your table at the first of the month, right? And you can refuse the flow, which will create consequences, right? But you don't have to dig up. You just, if you are in that position, money will come to you. Right? So different departments work differently. We know that that is how it works. There is different configuration to every place that works here, right? So presume, let's just say that you are in a department where corruption is flowing, and if you accept that money, you're just like everybody else, right? And that is a reward for you. But if you do not accept it, right, then there's a high likelihood that these other people around you, they're going to get you honey trapped, so to say. You know that planting money, that CBI traps, आधे से ज़्यादा लोग ज़्यादातर वो false लोग पकड़े जाते हैं. Because you're a threat. If you do not take bribe and everybody else does, you're a threat to everybody else. Because in case there's a problem, you will be the one giving testimony and witness. Right? So people don't want such people in their departments. So apparently, if you create too much of a problem, then soon they will get you labeled as corrupt and get you out of the department, get you transferred, or whichever way they can deal with you as a problem. Now you understand that if there's a flowing money department that you are in, right, and you're the one who doesn't accept it, you've increased your risk much higher than you have increased your reward. Now your reward is zero. All the rewards are the normal rewards. You're not getting any money, and the likelihood of getting caught is very less if you actually do corruption. That's the reality. In many departments, now that varies from department to department, many departments, there's widespread corruption and very less likelihood of getting caught. So if we actually look at the incentive structure from a person's decision-making standpoint, they end up thinking that if I take money, then I benefit, and very, very extremely less likelihood of getting caught as long as I play with everybody else, right? And if I refuse this, then not only do I not get the rewards, but I am likely to be victimized by people around in this department who are going to find the first opportunity to act against me. What do most people do? Most people, despite whatever their values are and role expectation is, will do role performance according to the inbuilt incentive structures of that department. So what we are saying is your role performance not only depends upon what your values are and what you want to do, it's a large part about what are the incentives in that environment. Not just the official ones, but how does it actually work? So what is the risk versus reward ratio to your actions? Now, as the occupant of a particular status, there are multiple roles to be performed. And so on and so forth. For example, that let's just say you are a father, and one of the roles that you are to perform is to love your children, and another role that you are to perform is to discipline them so that they understand right from wrong. You are to correct them when they do wrong. You cannot accept with love everything. You are to also modify their behavior in the right direction. But there is a strain within this. There is a strain within this. Performing role number 1 and performing role number 2 seem to be opposite to each other. Right. First condition being unconditional love. You accept everything. Right. You love. Second, you're required to discipline. That may require you to get sometimes upset, angry, punishment as not talking for some time, or whatever other tools that you're going to want to use. Right. But there is going to be a disciplining role. And both of them are contradictory to each other. Let me give you an example. I love my children with everything that I have. Right. And my daughter, I love her so much. Right. That I find it really difficult to scold her. However, I have other tools. Right. Yesterday, my wife was scolding my daughter for a bad thing she did. She started to cry, my daughter. She's 7 years old. She started to cry and cry and cry. I can't hear her cry. There are very few things that increase my BP, my blood pressure. If I hear her cry, if I even see her cry, if I see anything of her being upset, I become much more upset than her. So she was crying profusely, and God, I couldn't breathe properly. But I cannot interfere in this because something right is being taught. It's even more difficult on me than it is on her. Right. Her being scolded. And so what am I doing? I locked up my room. I could hear all this, but I started to meditate. I meditated for all that half an hour that it went on between my wife and my daughter. I cannot go ahead and undermine my wife by interfering. They have a direct relationship. Right. Otherwise, the power equation, she won't listen to her. Right. So, I meditated. After half an hour, when this was over, I went for a walk. And I told myself, the best thing I need to do right now is do nothing. Just do nothing. Let them work it out. But it's much more difficult on me than it is on her. She's just a kid. She gets over emotions very fast. It stays with me as guilt. Is this what we're doing to our children? Now, what do we see? We see that there is a problem between role 1 and role 2 because they require different things, right, to be done. And this is referred to as role strain. Right. Please write down. Role strain refers to the difficulties and contradictions, that exist, in the performance of different roles, difficulties and contradictions that exist in the performance of different roles, as the occupant of a single status. In the performance of different roles as the occupant of a single status. as the occupant of a single status. Full stop. So we're talking about just one status here. Now let's just look at the fact that one of the status that you occupy is, okay, and yeah, one more sentence. Please write down. All the statuses, all the roles that an individual performs, all the roles that an individual performs, all the roles that an individual performs as the occupant of a single status, that an individual performs as the occupant of a single status is called role set. As the occupant of a single status is called role set. First off. So everything, so I hope this is clear. Everything you're going to be doing as maybe a father, maybe as a mother, maybe as a daughter, maybe as a citizen, maybe as a neighbor, everything you're expected to do, all those single different things. You're expected to do many things, right? All them taken together is called a role set. So every single status has a role set alongside all the things you're expected to do. Now, obviously, you don't occupy just one single status at any time. You occupy a variety of statuses at any given time. So, one thing, you're a mother, you're also a daughter, you're also a sister, maybe you're also a working professional or maybe a student. You're also a neighbor. You're also a citizen. Maybe you're also a member of a religious group and practitioner of that, right? Maybe you're part of a charity and an advocate for a particular charitable cause, right? So much more number of statuses that you can have. But all the statuses that you occupy at any given point of time, right, they are referred to as status sets. Please write down. Status set refers to the variety of different statuses. Status set refers to the variety of different statuses that an individual occupies at a given point of time. At a given point of time. So now we see that one of the things that maybe you have is, you're a mother, and then you're a wife also, and then with each of these roles you will find that there is something called role conflict, which will emerge, especially the word we used previously was role strain, the word we're using now is role conflict. They mean different things. Right. The role conflict is coming because there is a conflict between your roles from different statuses which you simultaneously occupy. And that is especially because things like time and attention are limited. These are limited resources, with each one of them requiring allocations. So, you're a working professional, Your boss and your company may tell you that you have to be a committed professional. And that means that a lot of times, maybe when there are more projects or when the company is going through a difficult transition or whatever else is happening, that you give more time even after office hours, right, to your company. But then maybe you're also a daughter-in-law and you've got your parents-in-law to take care of. You're also a daughter. You're also a mother. You're also a wife. Right? And you've got to take care of all those things also. And you've got to be doing your part in the home responsibilities also, the household responsibilities also. So, obviously the time and attention are limited resources. Each of these roles, the children are going to come around and say, we never see you, and that is going to really hit you. Your husband will say, you forgot. Your parents will not say that, they will feel that way. You will see it in their eyes. So, you're going to be driven internally by this conflict of how you're going to do this and that and that and that and that and everything. Right. But essentially, this is going to be a conflict that exists because of all the multiple statuses that you occupy, and each one of them obviously are going to make demands over resources which are limited. So, the conflict that arises, please write down, role conflict refers to the conflict that arises in role performance. The conflict that arises in role performance as the occupant of different statuses. In role performance as the occupant of different statuses. This is especially so as there are conflicting demands. This is especially so as there are conflicting demands over limited resources. Conflicting demands over limiting resources. Or there may be inbuilt contradiction. 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 Full stop. Let me explain to you. A lot of people get into love marriages. If you look at people like Michael Schumacher, that race car guy, or these people in extreme sports, they're very popular with women. They're very popular with women because they have very high risk-taking ability that is attractive. After marriage, their wives want them to leave those risky sports because they're too risky. They were attracted to them in the first place because they were big risk takers. But after marriage, they want safety and security. So they would ask them, this is a common phenomena, to stop, going ahead with those risky sports. If they go ahead with those risky sports, continue to, without listening to their wives, they have disputes, marital disputes. If they leave those risky sports, now they're not as attractive anymore. So it is reported, especially in this Western context, that the magic is gone from the marriage. Ab they don't feel attracted to them anymore. What are we saying? There's an inbuilt contradiction. Somebody may ask you to say, explain, I want to know. But they're primarily attracted to you because you are a mystery, because they're not able to understand. And if you do explain everything, then they won't be attracted to anybody. You're not attracted to people that you completely understand. You feel superior to them. somebody that you can predict. Why do you want to understand somebody? Because you want to be able to predict their actions. But if you understand them so well that you're able to predict them, then you don't feel attracted to them. So the very reason that there was attraction in the first place was because of mystery, unpredictability. Stability and working in stable husband-wife conditions requires very different role performance than what it takes in romantic lover days. This is fundamentally contradictory. There are multiple other forms of contradictions between all the statuses that we are performing. At the end of the day, people end up being blamed for somehow that the problem is with them. The problem is not with them. That is how the rules of the game have been set. That is how the world works. You do this, you do that. Either way, you have a problem. Either way, you have a problem. Right? So, what are we saying? It could be that there are limited resources. You don't know how to balance those resources. Even if you do, there may be inbuilt conflict itself. See, whenever you become good at something, you also become bad at something else. They both come parallelly. The world exists of opposites, and opposites paradoxically exist together. If you kill one, you always kill the other. Let me give you an example. In the first years when I started teaching, I've had possibly for 5-6 years, whenever I've ended my batches, sociology batches, half the class at least has mass cried. We've had collective weeping sessions. That was how much sadness there was for the class to end. Students wanted the class to never ever end across their lives. Not a joke, really. And I've been a very, very enthusiastic person. Right. Over a period of time, but there was a problem. I wasn't predictable. Enthusiasm means that I took more holidays. Right. I went with flows and moods, and I was always on time. Right. Because that was the kind of person I was. Over a period of time, it mattered that you be on time more, you become more predictable, you work in institutional frameworks, so with great difficulty I changed that. And that took a lot of other things away. Enthusiasm, flair, emotions, a lot of that went away, which is the most important catch point in learning and teaching. That went away. So, if you want somebody to be not sad, don't cry, then remember, if they were effectively able to do it, then they won't laugh also. If somebody stops crying, they stop laughing as well. If they stop laughing, they stop crying as well. When you stop feeling pain, you will also start feeling happiness and bliss. When you stop feeling happy, you will also stop feeling pain. So, the world works in opposites. As long as we are living in this world, it is filled with these contradictions. And many of those contradictions cannot fundamentally be resolved. That's the nature of life. However, people end up blaming themselves for it, without looking at the levels in which these demands are itself conflicting. If you become good at one, you will parallelly become bad at the other thing. That is how it works. Now, this concludes our discussion with regards to status and role. And let me repeat what we've talked about with this. Status is the position you occupy in a hierarchy. As the occupant of a single status, all the roles that you're expected to do is referred to as the role set. And the strain that exists, right, the contradiction that exists in the performance of different roles as the occupant of a single status is called role strain. But any individual occupies multiple statuses at any given moment, which is called status set. and the conflict that exists in the performance of different role sets accompanying different statuses. The role set accompanying a daughter, sister, working professional, wife, all different role sets with each one of them. The conflict between them is called role conflict. So this is the terminology that we have spoken about so far. We're going to take a 5 minutes break, right? And after that, we will continue. Okay. So we're going to talk about some more words, conclusive concepts. So ethnocentrism, xenocentrism, and cultural relativism are the last terms that we're going to be talking about now. Okay. Ethnocentrism. Ethnocentrism. Please write down. Ethnocentrism refers to the phenomena, phenomena or tendency, TENDENCY, of individuals, groups and communities, to attach positive values, and preferential judgment, to their own in-group, and preferential judgment to their own in-group, in-group, and negative values, to the members of the outgroups, and negative value to the members of the outgroup. Full stop. Now, full stop. So what we see at any given point of time, that we have this tendency of in-group and out-group formation. Who is ours and who is theirs? We all do it. It is biological, evolutionary, but it is also social and contextual. What does that mean? A baby who is born without eyesight, cannot see, will also stop crying with the presence of her mother or the immediate caregiver in the room. They can smell them. And if somebody else steps into the room who is not their immediate caregiver, then they start crying. Even babies that young have a tendency to define their in-group and the out-group, who are theirs and who are not theirs. This is a biological mechanism. As we grow across life, we shift across these in-groups and out-groups, but we at any given point of time always have these ideas of who is our in-group and who is our out-group. This concept is not fixed, it changes contextually. Who is apne? Apne kaun hai? Apne, ours, kaun? In-group, who is that? When you are living in Bangalore, in Bengaluru, you may find that if you met somebody from North Karnataka, from maybe your district, maybe you are from Belgavi, you met somebody from Belgavi, or you met somebody from Kolar, or wherever you are from, then in Bangalore, living here outside, they will become apne, ye apne. These are from my place. Right. Other people are out group. When you go maybe for your interview preparation to Delhi, maybe living there for a while, or maybe for some mains products also, then or maybe before you go to Chennai, and there anybody that you meet from Karnataka is apne. when you were in Tamil Nadu. Now you go to Delhi. There, anybody you meet from South India becomes apne, ab ye apne. Then you may possibly go and live in Canada. When you are in Canada, you meet any Indian, Gujarati, Manipuri, Tamil Nadu, Haryanvi, right? You say, oh, ye apne hai, ye Indian. People there define Indian, people define apne even in a bigger way. वहां पे इंडियन पाकिस्तानी भी सेम सेम हो जाते हैं, ये मेरा पाकिस्तानी भाई है. Culture is very matching, much more matching than somebody that you will possibly find from Thailand or somebody that you will possibly find from Brazil. You will have much more understandability with the similar culture from somebody from Pakistan. कोई लाहौर से आ रहा है, उसको आप आसान से समझ लोगे, अर्जेंटीना वालों को मुश्किल है आपके लिए. So you will define when you're living in Canada apne as anybody from this region. So who is your in-group and who is your out-group? It continues to change contextually, socially, what are your conditions. But when you are part of it, at that point of time you can be very strong and staunch about it. Throw back the outsiders. Like for example, look at my face, outsider, right? Meaning I'm not from Karnataka, right? Originally I was not born here. My parents are not from here. I've been living here, right? And a lot of people, for example, see migrants, like in Maharashtra, for example, the Shiv Sena politics or the Maharashtra Navnirman Sena politics, which victimizes outsiders, specifically from Bihar and UP there, right? Saying outsiders are the problem, right? The migrants are the problem. Throw them back. But when you go outside from Maharashtra and live somewhere else, then everybody becomes apne. At that point of time, when you are the localer in Maharashtra, that point of time, your in-group, however it is defined, even it is contextual, right? But that point, it's a very strong idea. And when your position changes, you will define it differently. So what we are saying is, we as people have a tendency to create in-groups and out-groups. And although they keep changing across our life and they are contextual in creation, but when you are a part of it, it's a very strong idea. Now, ethnocentrism is this tendency of behavior where people attach positive values with their in-group and negative values of judgment to the out-group. We know that people always see heterogeneity in in-group and homogeneity in out-group. Heterogeneity means you see diversity and differences and nuances, minute differences. You can see how people are different. All of you are from Karnataka here, but you don't see everybody as the same. You see, oh, this person is like that. You see personal differences, attitudinal differences, capacity, competency differences, physical differences. You see everything. If you see a Chinese, you say, to sare ek jaise dikhte hain. China is such a big country, right? Practically, you say, I can't identify difference between Chinese and Japanese. Sare same kar diye humne. Koreans bhi same. To sare वैसे दिखते हैं. Obviously, they don't see it themselves like that. When in China, the Chinese people see themselves in differences very significantly. People here often see in India that Sikhs to सारे एक जैसे दिखते हैं. Sikh community people, right? सबकी दाढ़ी होती है. All have big beards. All have big turbans, right? Big beard and big turban only leaves the nose and this part of the cheeks to be seen, identified. बाकी तो सब same है, right? How do you know? I've seen this problem with a lot of people who come to Punjab side, right? They come around and say, everybody looks the same. Initially you do. When you start living there, you start to see all the differences that you see when you're living here. What is the point? In general, we always see in-group as heterogeneous, as diverse, and out-group because we want to label them. ये तो सारे खराब होते हैं. Usually that is how the labeling is done. तो खराब होते हैं. So homogeneous. You may have only met one person from a state and that person may be your example of what the state is like. You having met one person from Karnataka, cannot judge Karnataka, because that person's variations may be no reflection of, everything that happens here, right? But that is the general tendency that we all have inbuilt. We homogenize the outgroup and attach negative values to them, whoever the outgroup is at that point of time. So we end up saying, so we see, for example, various forms of ethnocentrism in saying India is great. It's a form of ethnocentrism. India is great, world is, we are the best. What is the definition of patriotism given by Rabindranath Tagore? Rabindranath Tagore defined patriotism by saying that it is the notion, it is the idea that my country is the best because I was born in it. It is the idea that my country is the best because I was born in it. If you have any other justification why you are the best, then you would actually need to travel, study, have interactions, wide scale. It will take a lot of experience, and if you have all that experience, then you won't be able to say that I am the best. You can only say it out of a position of ignorance. So why are you saying, but you feel very strongly, so many people, everybody living here, and in other countries also feel that my country is the best. They also feel the same way. Why? Primarily their whole assertion is based on the idea that because I was born here, this is the best. Rest I know nothing. If you know more, then you can't say this. So what is this? It is a form of ethnocentrism. Nationalism is also a form of ethnocentrism, where people end up thinking mine is the best, whatever is mine, my in-group, that is the best, others are. That idea is called ethnocentrism. For example, there is something called, a popular culture shows Rajput ethnocentrism, shows casteist ethnocentrism, right? Jat or Jat ethnocentrism are popular, widely studied in sociology, in researches, examples of ethnocentrism. Right? Jats are a community that are spread across multiple states. Haryana, UP, Rajasthan have significant populations of the Jat community. The Jat community, that's a single A, is primarily in Punjab. They are majorly Sikh by religion. Jats are mainly, the larger part of the population is Hindu. There's a difference between the Jat community and the Jat community. Now, there is both Jat and Jat ethnocentrism. Jat ethnocentrism has been studied a lot in sociological researches. Right. What does it mean? Like, I'll tell you a Punjabi song, sing one line of it. Right. My culture is Punjabi. Right. Although I'm urban 3 generations. Right. Chandigarh, that's my hometown. Right. 3 generations. And so, you're urban long enough, you lose all kinds of culture. And I've lived across India, like 15 years of my life in Gujarat, Assam, Jammu, Kashmir, Bangalore obviously, Delhi for long periods of time. So I've kind of, and Chandigarh, and traveled a lot. Right? So I'm mixy. What you put in a blender and then you create. I'm blender product. Right. Now, we find that there's a song now which goes like this. ਬਾਮਣਾ ਦੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਜੱਟ ਦੀ ਏ ਯਾਰੀਆ ਜਾਣ ਤੋਂ ਪਿਆਰੀ ਜੱਟ ਨੂੰ ਏ ਯਾਰੀਆ ਗੱਲ ਮੂੰਹੋਂ ਕੱਢੀ ਪੂਰੀ ਮੈਂ ਪਕਾਉਣੀਆਂ ਗੱਲ ਮੂੰਹੋਂ ਕੱਢੀ ਪੂਰੀ ਮੈਂ ਪਕਾਉਣੀਆਂ ਕੁੜੀ ਜੱਟ ਦੀ ਪਸੰਦ ਜੱਟ ਨੇ ਵੀ ਆਉਣੀਆਂ ਉਹ ਕੁੜੀ ਜੱਟ ਦੀ ਪਸੰਦ ਜੱਟ ਨੇ ਵੀ ਆਉਣੀਆਂ. Now let me convert this into English. This is a Punjabi song. Right. It's a very popular song. Right. There's multiple songs like that, and so this study of sociology has been done on popular Bollywood culture and popular Bollywood songs, mainstream songs, and the degree to which they reflect Jat ethnocentrism and casteist and spread casteist hatred. Right. Now, this song basically says in its lyrics, this is a very, very popular song, it's in every marriage there, and their marriage is like here, you get up in the morning, early morning marriage, everybody dresses in white and maybe a little golden, and then, you go do that solemn ceremonies in the morning, peaceful morning environment, like there it happens in the night, and everybody gets drunk and dances and dances and dances until they become a bloody fool out of them, and then they dance and drink more and fall, right? That's how it's done there. Right? It's very different. Right? Boisterous, loud marriages. Right? Now, the song says, basically the lyrics say that this loving relationship, this romantic relationship engagement between this guy and girl is not of a Brahman, but it is of a Jat, right? And unlike the Brahman who is spineless or backless, meaning has no capacity to fight back, is somebody who's without any how do you say that, courage, right, or competency, fighting competency, so to say, in a demeaning way, right? That this is a Jat's relationship, and as such, right, there is no way that anybody from society is going to be able to break this. Right? That's basically what these lines say. Right? And it's just an example of what ethnocentrism is like, and this is across, where we find a lot of our culture, right, where certain communities are glorified. Usually, which ones? The dominant castes. The ones which are usually glorified in tools of media that came later are usually the ones who are dominant landowners in their area. They're not necessarily numerically in majority. The ones who have captured the cultural imagination and been able to position themselves as with great values or with great qualities, right? They are usually the ones who are the dominant landowning communities on the ground, who have been able to convert their dominant influence from the economy and polity. Those who are dominant landowning are also significant political influencers. Most of the wealth in our country and across the world is in land ownership. Around 60% of the total wealth is in land ownership. If we study land ownership patterns, we understand who is powerful. Politics, as multiple other domains, are heavily dependent upon money sources, which not only come from traditional modern industry or IT people and their funding, but a large part of it comes from people who own land. So they are very influential in politics also. And when you control the economy and are significantly influenced in politics, then you are able to shape things like media and the popular culture. So the history of who and why owned that land, that's a long history, and that's for other detailed lessons in classes, right? Subsequently, for how and why those patterns form and who is the chief beneficiary of that in which area. Now, we anyway understand what do we mean by ethnocentrism. I think we've got that idea. What ethnocentrism means, ridiculing or attaching negative values to whoever the other is, however you label it. You may label it as China or Pakistan from the country level, or maybe as whatever the outside community is, right? Whoever it is, the outgroup. The opposite of that, the opposite of ethnocentrism is xenocentrism. Please write down. Xenocentrism refers to the phenomena or tendency of attaching negative traits of attaching negative traits, traits, of attaching negative traits to the in-group, and positive attributes to the out-group. Negative traits to the in-group and positive attributes to the out-group. And positive attributes to the out-group. Full stop. Let me give you some examples of what this looks like. People brag, which they think they're proud of. Anything which is foreign or foreign association. Oh, my uncle brought this from USA. Whatever that is. Oh, my aunt brought these chocolates from Switzerland. Switzerland बोलने से इज्जत बढ़ जाती है. Respect increases. Whatever, oh, this is a Japanese technology. Without understanding or having a deep understanding of what technology is in that state in India or in Japan and how is it different, you don't have any fundamental understanding of technology. People just presume that because it's Japanese, it's better. Oh, this is Korean watch. This is Korean whatever. So one is that kind of a tendency or likelihood. Then with other kinds of attributes, not only to products or services, but to other attributes, nature attributes. Indians तो corrupt हैं, हमारे यहाँ तो corruption है. We are corrupt people. Corruption exists much more in many parts of the world and even in Western developed countries. Or we may see authoritarianism. Indians को कभी अकल नहीं आएगी. People don't have any sense. Politicians are bad here. Look at the politicians in other countries. In many ways, they are worse off also. There's a mixed bag everywhere. Like there's a mixed bag here. But we take a summary position often. Or there are people who take that summary position. We are corrupt. Oh, we are incompetent. Look at them. Learn from them. Right. Without understanding what is their reality. So a lot of people come around and say, oh, we don't have secularism. We don't have secular culture. We should learn from the Western educated enlightened man. If you ever look at either their history or even their current status, you would understand they are possibly some of the farthest people from secularism. We are effectively in the natural position to be their teacher. I'm not saying that everything that is happening today is best, but if you look at the summary position between where we are and where they are, they don't know shit about secularism. I'm saying that with a lot of gravity. I'm going to, when I teach secularism, it's going to be a lot of content there. Right? They don't know shit about secularism. Their current practices are nowhere near. If we understand their history, it is pitiable. If we understand what their practices are, they are condemnable. Even today, they are condemnable. And those are large-scale, systematic, institutionalized practices. Something that they've adopted as policy. We, however, since we're always hyper-aware of problems nearby us, grass always seems greener on the other side, whichever side that is. So, we end up thinking that wo to better hi honge because we have lesser awareness of the news that happens there. Here you read all the news. And news is mostly negative. The more news you hear, the more dismissed with life you will become. More troubled with life you will become, the more news you read. Because news is mostly negative only. Positive things are covered much less because the newsworthy things, viral things, more readable things are the negative things, and that's because of human nature. We have a bias called fear appraisal. What that means is we always give more attention to something that we may lose than something that we may gain. So if one newspaper fills itself with more negative news and another with more positive news, you will read the one filled with more negative news. If you see a person walking and that person has a lot of idiosyncrasies and quirks, has a lot of unique tendencies, you will tend to see and notice the negative ones more than the positive ones. We always, that's a human bias. we always see, and that there's a lot of reason for that, why you do what you do. There can be much more, let me give you an example to explain, by utility theory example. Let's just say you're invested in the share market, right? And or you have whatever an investment profile, and somebody says that you have to invest 10 lakh rupees, right? And if you invest 10 lakh rupees, you can either lose 10 lakh rupees or you can gain 10 lakh rupees. So you will have either 20 lakh rupees at the end of this 1 year period, or you will have no money left. In order to take that gamble, somebody will have to pay you money to be able to bet. If you bet on your own in that position, you are naive. For most people. Let me explain. If you already have 10 lakhs and you gain 10 lakhs, the value that the new 10 lakhs will bring will not be as much. There is a law of diminishing marginal utility. Whatever you have, when you get more of it, it brings value but lesser value subsequently. You already have food on the table. The first, this much food matters most. Uske baad kitta hai, that matters less and less, because it will add lesser value to you. When you already have 10 lakhs, more 10 lakhs will be some value to you, but lesser one than the first 10 lakhs. In terms of what you can buy in your life, how you will use it to, gain the essentials of your life and safety and security in your life. But if you lose that 10 lakhs that you have and you go down, you will be in a much worse position. Much worse position. So usually we tend to focus much more attention on trying to avoid losses than trying to gain the same thing. That is how the human mind works. And so we tend to focus much more on negative things than positive things. Because the idea is, if I'm able to avoid the worst case scenario, that is best for me. To live longest, you need to be always aware that the lion is not hiding in the bush. That's what influenced our genetics. Caveman scenario, hunter food gatherer. You've got to avoid the bad case scenario every time. Good case scenario, you can still go without food for weeks. But avoiding the bad case scenario, that's what you're most focused on. So we tend to read the negative news much more. So everybody in the media tends to give us negative news much more, because that's what sells. And the more you read it, the more you know it, the more you learn it, the more fundamentally dissatisfied and disenchanted with life you become. It is a cyclical therapy to become grossly unhappy and disgruntled in your life, to read news. Now, the idea is that since you're always obviously more aware about all the news from your environment, which is dominatingly negative, right? You always tend to think that in general yours is negative, and the outside, which you don't know, you presume to be positive by comparison. So this trend is called often xenocentrism, where people end up attributing positive ideas, positive traits, positive competencies to whatever is outside. In Punjab and Haryana, like in many other states, but nothing like Punjab and Haryana in the numbers and the scale of it, people are just trying to out-migrate. We find that villages after villages are empty. There are no people in the young age bracket. All the people in the villages are elderly only. The migration towards outside countries from these states is very high. People feel that whatever is here is not good enough and outside is good. Let me explain. Here, somebody has 15 acres of land, whose average valuation in that area would be something like 50 lakhs or 1 crore per acre. So their net worth as the son in that family is approximately something like, let's just say, 4 or 5 crores. 4 or 5 crores net worth, and they don't work in their fields. Okay. Now, they would migrate to New Zealand, Canada, Australia, wherever, and there they would drive a cab or work on somebody else's farm, things like that. That they find honorable, working on somebody else's farm in New Zealand, but not on their own farm in India. Why? Because there is a presumption कि बाहर जो है वो तो जाके पता लगेगा कि है कि नहीं. When you go outside, you get to understand whether it is good enough, the same or not, better as you thought or not. But there is a widespread presumption that whatever is outside is better. Whatever is here is not good enough. There is this cultural judgment that ours is not good enough. And this tendency, right, is called xenocentrism. Then there is something called cultural relativism. Cultural relativism. Please write down. Cultural relativism refers to the view that cultural traits, characteristics, attributes cannot be judged from the outside. Cannot be and should not be judged from the outside. Cannot be and should not be judged from the outside. Rather, they should be interpreted. And made sense of. Within their own cultural context. Interpreted and made sense of within their own cultural context. Interpreted and made sense of within their own cultural context. Full stop. Let me give you the background to where this term and this concept comes from. Europeans ruled us, imperialism and then colonialism. And in their colonies, they exported their ideas. The Europeans studied the African and the Asian cultures of the colonies that they were ruling over. And then they thought that these people are so backward, they are so primitive, they don't know anything, right? And they judged us from their perspective. Without thorough knowledge of our culture, they made all these presumptions of us being primitive and backward and and rudimentary, not developed, stuff like that. And this reflects in their judgmental viewpoint across all histories and cultures and stories and narratives that they have written, which continue to dominate us till date. They saw the most varied set of practices, couldn't understand it, and wrote texts which were ethnocentric from their perspective, Eurocentric, glorifying Europeans and making us, their outgroup, appear as primitive and backward and with negative characteristics. Let me give a certain example. You see, the traditional Indian culture valued a lot of things. For example, people of different genders were having great respect. Transgenders had been in the most important and powerful positions across kingdoms in India. They were revered and worshipped, considered to be very auspicious. How did they reach the position they reached to today? The most oppressed position in society? On account of British mindset in their systems. As they saw that only man and woman there should be two genders and everything else is an abnormality. That is the same thing they saw with sexes. They had a very restrictive idea of sexual morality at that point of time. The most regressive, backward mindset on sexual morality. And they came to India and imposed those ideas upon us, the country with the most forward-looking mindset on sexual morality in the world. And today we see everything from their mindset because their books are dominating. The intellectuals read theirs and are teaching that, and that has become widespread. We had systems like Devdasi system, which they labeled prostitution. Let me explain to you, it was the best system in the world for women. Women owned property, women owned the house, women had sex with whoever they wanted to. Nobody controlled their sexuality. The only example of true matriarchy that you find here in traditional India is the Devdasi system before it became corrupted with the Chola Empire. And subsequently, much more so with the British understanding of looking at it through the prostitution lens. There were 3 types of Devdasi systems with 3 different manners in which it worked. What am I explaining to you? They couldn't understand what was happening. And what did they do? They created laws. Today, large number of our tribes are called criminal tribes, denotified tribes. A long list of people suffer. We're talking about lakhs, if not crores of people who are called criminal tribes or denotified tribes. They criminalized them. They called them criminal. You know why? Because they did not live in a particular position. We had people who moved around. They were nomadic, semi-nomadic. The Britishers thought anybody who is not living in the same place is not a respectable person. These vagabonds, these nomads, these tramps, they're all nuisance to society. They called them criminal and passed laws criminalizing them. Till date, they suffer from that, from the stigma. People see them as criminals. Don't employ them. They do not get any education. There were some of the most suffering people in our society till date. What are we saying? We can go endlessly into the stories and the sections of what this mindset meant when they came around and saw us and called us primitive. And let me give you the bigger idea. When you, so I'm explaining that this mindset was ethnocentrism, and the opposite of that developed was cultural relativism. So when they came around and called us primitive, let us look at this point. What is the point of life? To be happy? From an individual's perspective. From a species perspective, you will say to produce more. By that standard, the chicken is the most successful species. Chicken has become that is how many chickens are produced. But from happiness standard, it is the most miserable species. From the species production standard, it is the most successful. From your perspective, from the species itself perspective, it is happiness. That is the measurement of success. Everything you do why? Because you think you will be happy. You think if you donate, then you will find satisfaction in self-image that I am a good person, I donate. In that self-image that I am a good person, you will find happiness, so you donate. Even when nobody else is looking, you do good things sometimes. Because it shapes your self-image. You feel that I am a good person, and that gives you happiness inside, contentment, satisfaction. Even if you're doing good things like that, or you take care of your parents, or you have good money, then the idea is that you will have good money, other people will respect you. When they respect you, you will find that you're a valuable person, you will feel happy. Essentially, everything you're doing is because you think you're going to be happy. That's a very different question, whether your presumption is correct. Whether what you're doing to get yourself to be happy actually results in happiness. This is where people got cheated. Simple point being, if the point of life is to be happy, then we should understand what are the ingredients of happiness. What are the constituents of it? Community is the single most important ingredient of happiness. I am right now not giving you details, but this is the result of the longest in the world done case study in Harvard. The single most important contributor to happiness is a friend group or community or people that you have to grow old with. Not that you don't fight with, but you can have fights, but that you can grow old with, a network of people around you. This is the single most important determinant of happiness in your own life. Apart from that, there are a lot of other ingredients. And the science of happiness, and I'm telling you the science of happiness, we have coefficients, we have percentages, we have factors which are primary factors, which are secondary factors. It's a whole science of what makes you happy. क्योंकि हमारे यहाँ तो हम presume करके चलते कि जॉब लग गए तो हैप्पी हो ही जाएंगे. अच्छा, बेवकूफ है बाकी सारी दुनिया. जॉब लग गए तो हैप्पी हो जाएंगे. देखिए कभी जॉब वाले लोग. If we understand the science of happiness, basically that is what people want. They want to be happy. Then you understand what are the ingredients of a good life and what are the ingredients of happiness, which is a whole science. So, we were happy people. That's what matters, doesn't it? We had community, we had time, we had lives which provided us the grand essentials of life: hope, community, somebody to love, something to care for. We had that. The biggest problem in life is not death, it is that you never lived. That is what people are getting with the modern economy. The biggest problem of life is not pain. Remember, pain is great. Despair, hopelessness is your biggest problem. Hopeless and despair people are problem. Dead people are not your problem. People who never lived are your problem. There's a big difference between empty zombies living, never feeling life, and people who are dead. There's a big difference between that. Modern science has added 25 years to life expectancy from previous around 50 years to an average globally around 75 years. But what you don't understand is those 25 years are miserable years, disease-ridden years. These are not healthy, happy years that you've added. It's much better to live healthy and happy, and that's just an average. People lived longer, happier, healthier before. We've misidentified what your actual problem is. Let me give you a small song. It's a Hindi song and I'll convert it into English. लोग ऐसे भी हैं जो जिए ही नहीं, जिनको जीने से पहले ही मौत आ गई. लोग फूल ऐसे भी हैं जो खिले ही नहीं, जिनको खिलने से पहले फिजा खा गई. It's a long song, I won't trouble you with it. But the essential point here is, it's not the death that your problem is. It's the people who fear death because they never lived. An empty shell-like life. Working like an ant, going in a metro, day in, day out, without finding happiness, enthusiasm, joy, the roller coaster of emotions, and then dying like an empty shell. That is your problem. That is what society has created. If we evaluate, and this is a long list of evaluation parameters we're not going into right now, but what traditional society provided for was much more satisfied, happy living. And I'll conclude this with one example, which will kind of anecdotally, in a story example, explain what I mean to say between the contrast between the Eastern lifestyle and the Western lifestyle that was sold in the name of progress. Right. So there's this kid, right? And this kid is, there's this guy, and this guy is like, has this small shop like alongside a home. You may have seen, a lot of our village roads, right? There's a small shop, the same place is also the home. The person is sleeping in the backside. You're sleeping in the afternoon. He's got 2 kids. He's sleeping with those kids, and he's got a backyard farm. He has his small own crops, his food, vegetable crops that he grows. And, in the front end, in the small shop, there are some bananas, and maybe there is some pan bidi gutka, and maybe there are some water bottles, and maybe there's some small set of things that, are on sale. And this CEO of this big Fortune 500 company, who happened to be visiting that area because they're looking for maybe some big land acquisition in that area, their factory plan that they want to set up, end up going on that small dusty road, and his car breaks down, and he happens to walk a mile and reach this place in the middle of nowhere with a small shop, and he finds finally a shop, and he bangs on the door, and he wants a bottle of water and some stuff. But this guy is sleeping, so he bangs and bangs and bangs, and after 5 minutes or maybe 2 minutes, this guy wakes up and comes around to the front side and says, yes, what do you want? And he says, well, give me a glass of water. Give me a bottle of water, and I'll have some bananas, and let me give you some free advice. He says, if you want to be successful, you can't be sleeping around at work time, right? Having all these afternoon naps. You're the only shop in this area for miles and miles, so you should increase your inventory. So you should keep a little bit of everything, because there is no shop to compete with. You don't need to go into specialization. Just keep a lot of inventory, because anybody is here, they will buy from you. And preferably, if you can, move your shop, to a cross-section area where there's more footfall, where there are more people going around, right? And that way you will have more business, and that way you will have more profit margins. And if you save a little, you can possibly, in this area, since you're the local language speaker, you're the local, you can set up these small shops at all these various different corners across intersections, and then you can have small retail chain. And by making that, then you can integrate it with the proper city side retail chains and the rural retail chain, and you can establish collaborations, and then you can start expanding upon the rural areas and cover everywhere across, and you'll have a big retail chain. And you'll have to work day and night, but yes, you'll have a big retail chain, and you will be able to make a lot of money. And the guy listening on the other side of the counter says, and then what? He says, and then you have a lot of money, and you're an important person, and you have a big retail chain. He says, and he says, and then you can do whatever you want to do. You can, he says, like what? He says, then you can go on holidays, you can sleep when you want to sleep, you can have enough time with your children, you can play with your children whenever you want to do, you can do things like gardening or going to fishing or whatever you want to do. He says, and what do you think I was doing before you came here? And that is kind of the anecdotal, the story example of what is being sold to us. It's a mirage. Mirage is when you go on a road and you see water there, but water is not really there. It's an illusion. We are selling in the name of a dream, a mirage, that ये करने के बाद खुशी है, happiness है नहीं. आगे जाओगे तो वहां पे नहीं है. Now, ethnocentrism is a dominant European idea, especially because of, it dominated European literature in the way that they saw their colonies, right? But later, this idea developed in sociology that, you shouldn't be judging a culture that you don't understand, that you're not a part of. And I'll give you an example of that. So, there are people who do this rain dance, rain dance, and when they dance and sing, it's supposed to bring the rain. Now the Western man came around and said, well, dumb idiots, they don't know how the water cycle works, and their dancing has nothing to do with the rain, right? So just dumb people. But if we look deeper, there's a lot happening here. We understand that when people sing and dance together, then it really creates strong unity in the group. The people in the forest conditions who are living and doing this, they really depend upon nature, right? And their primary survival force is community. They need to keep the community strong. They suffer from a lot of things. How do people recuperate? How do people heal? See, today we are so fragile. Small things happen to us, we break from the inside. किसी ने बुरा बोल ही दिया, वो आधे दिन भूलता नहीं. You have a small fight on the road, वो भी half day disturb कर देती है. They are the people who are living in natural conditions. They deal with death and all kinds of things on an everyday basis. They're not that fragile. You know why? Because which is the biggest healing force? Nature. Nature. If you understand medicine and human understanding, you will understand that the best thing that heals you is nature. If you don't do anything, this is science. मैं आपको whatever I'm saying here, वो आपको जनरल ज्ञान नहीं दे रहा हूं क्योंकि वो तो हमारे बुजुर्ग हमको दे सकते हैं अच्छे से. द प्रॉब्लम विद आवर एल्डर्स इज कि वो ये नहीं बता सकते कि साइंटिफिकली कैसे. दैट इज वेयर आई एम ब्रिजिंग द गैप हियर. And I won't go into the long story here. I'll give you small examples. If you take because there's a long science of when I mean nature heals. Rabindranath Tagore said that. He did not give you statistics. I'll give you statistics. If you take a 2-hour walk in a pine forest, pine scented, it activates tens of thousands of T cells, killer cells, which kill diseases in your body. Right. For around 1 week. They become activated. If for 2 hours you take a walk in a pine forest, if you buy a pine essence from the Amazon, it does the same thing. These chemicals are interactive ways. When you smell them, then your body has an interaction, a chemical interaction, and it changes what happens in your body. When you smell lavender flowers, then it changes how you sleep. It makes it deeper, longer, stable. We can go on about every single composition. When you touch a tree, then it reduces your blood pressure. It stabilizes your heart rate variability, HRV, which is a core measure of your cardiovascular system's health. When you touch a tree. We can go on from every single, it's a very long study of every single interaction. Even if you see a plant, if you are in a classroom where you out of the window as a student can see trees, then every single day your performance on every single test is better, in contrast to a student who cannot see greenery outside the classroom. Over a 1-year period, the result is so much dramatically different between the person with the tree outside and the person with not, that over a 1-year period, no matter how many teachers you have effectively, the person under the tree or with the tree visibility performs better. Over a 10-year period or over an education who has been around nature, their academic performance cognitively is more than 100%, much more, higher and better than anybody who was not around greenery. That is the effect on cognition, just by seeing it. We can start explaining every single impact that it has, what kind of tree, what kind of sand, what kind of mud, and what does it do to your body. I'm just giving you a simple fact, a summary statement right now. Nature heals. Nature heals. Those people who are living in jungles, when they come around and sing and dance in that rain dance, the deepest form of healing happens. The deepest healing that happens in the lower regions of your brain is through singing and dancing rhythmically together. When in South Africa, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission happened after apartheid regime came to an end, led by Nelson Mandela in South Africa. 1994, the apartheid regime came to an end. And what did they do? So many people had died. So many people had been killed. In choirs, they sang songs together. They moved rhythmically together, played music together and cried. The whole country cried. Cried and cried, singing songs together, moving rhythmically. It healed something that no modern science with all the medicine can heal. What is happening in this singing and dancing, chemically, biologically, psychologically, can be explained with deep science. The people doing it don't understand the science behind it, but they can feel it. And there's some simple understanding is it feels good. And so they do it. It is very important to them. However, the Western man comes along and says, barish to hoti nahi se. So it shouldn't be done. It should be discontinued. What are we saying? Without actually a deeper understanding of all the possible roles that a certain cultural trait plays in a culture, we should not judge. We should not judge. And that idea is called cultural relativism. No matter how absurd it looks to you, like in China, there is something called ghost marriages. Do you know that? There's something called ghost marriage. You actually get married to ghosts, where the ceremony is half of a burial ceremony, there is a dead body involved, and part is a marriage ceremony. And for what reasons is a long story of how and why it happens in various formats. Sitting outside, you would think it's absurd. You understand that culture, why they do it, there's a lot of reasons. The Turkish people keep dead bodies in their home hanging from their balconies. They keep the dead bodies of their elders in coffins hanging from their balconies at all times. It sounds absurd to somebody who doesn't understand it. There will be judgment. That would be ethnocentrism. You understand why they do it, right? What sense it makes in their context. That is called cultural relativism. Okay. So this rounds up our discussion of all the concepts that we have to talk about before we talk about more, right? Just wait here for a minute. There's an important announcement, and yeah, I just need a minute, so please wait. Because I'll call you in 2 minutes. Okay. All right. If you come over now and I'll talk.